This is an ABC News special report.
I'm Whit Johnson in New York, and we're coming on the air because the Department of Justice has just released the redacted affidavit that the government used to justify its search of former President Trump's home at Mar-a-Lago. Again, these documents just coming out. You can see right there on your screen, many portions of this heavily redacted. But we are getting some revealing information. So let's bring in our Chief Washington correspondent, Jonathan Karl, and our Chief Justice correspondent, Pierre Thomas. Both of them will help break this all down. Pierre, let's start with you because you are getting some important information as it relates to probable cause.
With the affidavit is heavily redacted. Large portions are blacked out to protect witnesses and where the investigation is headed. But a newly released document with the affidavit makes clear that the investigation is ongoing and active, noting that there are, quote, multiple civilian witnesses that need to be protected from intimidation or retaliation. But the main thing that the affidavit does is walk us through how this investigation unfolded. First, the National Archives in 2021 learned that there were a significant number of missing presidential records from the Trump administration. As a result of negotiations with President Trump, 15 boxes were sent from Mar-a-Lago to the National Archives in January of this year. What they found was deeply disturbing: highly classified materials. National Archives officials were so concerned that they turned over the boxes to the FBI this past May. We have a breakdown of what was in those boxes. There were 184 documents marked classified, among them 92 secret and 25 top secret. And there were other documents apparently even more sensitive, including one that involved secrets designed to protect clandestine sources. Another highly classified document involved national defense. The affidavit makes clear that the FBI found probable cause to believe there were additional documents at Mar-a-Lago which potentially impacted national security. The affidavit also claims there was probable cause to believe there was evidence of obstruction of justice at Mar-a-Lago. Federal authorities believe they found the missing documents that they were looking for, and now they're urgently trying to protect these witnesses and the information. Whit?
Pierre, thank you. And stand by for us as we walk through this. Let's bring in John Karl, who obviously has been following this very closely. And John, we know the Trump team has suggested openly and publicly that they wanted this affidavit to be released, but they never actually made that case in court.
The former president said he wanted the material released. His spokesperson reiterated that demand, but they were absolutely silent in court on this. When you look at this information, even as heavily redacted as it is damaging, I would argue, to the former president. You see that there is the FBI saw that he had removed considerable amounts of documents marked classified, and this they knew this well before the search of Mar-a-Lago. This was in the 15 boxes that Pierre just mentioned had been turned over after a lengthy negotiation that ran most of last year to the National Archives, and that the Justice Department is outlining what they believe are evidence of crimes. And by the way, one thing that's addressed, although in a heavily redacted way, is the argument that has been made by those close to Donald Trump that he had somehow declassified all this material, and therefore there was nothing at issue here. That argument is mentioned, and then the response to that argument, much of it is blacked out. But what is pointed out here is the concern that the material was placed at Mar-a-Lago in a way that was not secure, and it goes through in some detail the strict laws. I know what you're familiar with the way classified material must be viewed. It has to be done in a secure location. In fact, while Donald Trump was president, there was a setup at Mar-a-Lago called a SCIF, which would ensure that material could be viewed and discussed in a way that couldn't be penetrated by people trying to eavesdrop. Well, none of that exists anymore at Mar-a-Lago, and the concern is that this material, highly sensitive material, was stored in an improper way at Mar-a-Lago, where not only Donald Trump would have access to it, but potentially many other people.
And I think the other thing that's worth pointing out here is, while this search of Mar-a-Lago may have come as a shock to so many Americans, this was a process of back and forth between Trump's team and the National Archives and the DOJ that lasted more than a year. In fact, I think it's worth going to some of the timeline here because the National Archives had pursued these documents for months, as we pointed out. And earlier, as Pierre mentioned in his reporting, in June, the FBI visited Mar-a-Lago, and an attorney for former President Trump claimed that all the classified material had been returned. But then again, on August 8th, when the FBI arrived with that search warrant, they found documents classified secret and top secret. And again, that's what is being revealed here in this unsealed affidavit, including some of the highest documents with some of the highest levels of classification. So let's go ahead and bring in now Mary McCord. She's the former DOJ head of National Security Division, now a professor at Georgetown University. Mary, thanks so much for being with us. And you, of course, were in charge of the division that is doing this search here. So you have some special insight. And I wonder, from your take on all of this, we've heard about the probable cause and the possibility of obstruction. What stands out to you as far as possible crimes that may have been committed?
Well, we've had only a few minutes, of course, to skim over the affidavit, but I do think it's significant that this isn't all just about the mishandling of and retention of classified documents or documents that are national defense information. I mean, that's one of the crimes for which the warrant sought evidence, right? There were probable cause established in this affidavit that evidence of 3 different crimes would likely to be found at Mar-a-Lago. One of those involves the unlawful retention of classified information or the mishandling of it or transmitting it to others. And this affidavit, unlike the warrant cover sheet that we saw a week or so ago, actually specifies the subsection of the law 793E, which is about that unlawful transmission or retention of national defense information. But notably, the other 2 crimes that are mentioned are, one is an obstruction offense and one is an unlawful taking of presidential records, which don't have to be classified at all. And the obstruction offense, I do think it's notable that at paragraphs 52 and 53 of the affidavit, which are partly unredacted, there is reference to this letter, which is attached in full to the affidavit, a letter from the former president to the Department of Justice, making arguments that the president has authority to declassify anything, that the laws about mishandling classified information don't apply to him, and that DOJ has a duty of candor to share that information with any court that would be considering any type of warrant or any type of legal process. And so that makes me wonder a little bit if there is some concern that those arguments being made back in May were also potentially part of an obstruction effort.
Barry, thank you again for your time today. This has been a fast-moving process. It was just yesterday, a few hours after the DOJ submitted its proposed redactions, that the judge appeared to be satisfied with it and then ordered that redacted version of the affidavit be released a day later. So that's what we're looking at, again, right there on your screen, 38 pages. You can see just how much of it is blacked out, but that's for specific reasons that are laid out here to protect witnesses, grand juries, sources and methods, things that could compromise the progress of the investigation. I want to bring in one of our legal contributors here at ABC News, Brian Buckmeyer, who's been following this very closely. And Brian, walk us through what happens next, because we know that the Trump team has also requested something called a special master. And just wondering how this all plays out moving forward.
So the next steps are for the Trump team to look at what is and what isn't in this memorandum affidavit that we're looking at. Now, for most of you looking at it, you think, well, the middle of it is basically blacked out, but the beginning and end has some information, but the end is actually an attachment, a letter from the Trump team to that of the DOJ. And the beginning is just a lot of case law. So there's not a lot here when you think about what did or didn't happen. What the Trump team is going to do is take this and try to pry open as much information as possible. They can either ask, as they've done, to have a master look at it separate from that of the judge who issued the warrant, or they can ask for an attorney's eyes only, where they can maybe look at it, promise not to send it out to anyone else or even to their own client, and try to make the arguments that are appropriate. Because the next steps that may happen would be an arrest and an indictment if the DOJ feels that they can prove these charges beyond a reasonable doubt.
All right, thank you. I want to bring back our Chief Justice correspondent, Pierre Thomas, because you've been covering the Justice Department for 2 decades, really. And you pointed out in an internal email to us, and forgive me as I'm sharing it publicly here, but you never in the time of your entire career have really seen something like this where they release this much information so quickly. Why is this such an unprecedented case?
Well, clearly because it involves a former president of the United States. The Justice Department was under enormous pressure to give some sense of why they raided the president's resort. They knew they had to give additional information. You saw the judge, the magistrate in this case, realized that it was such a significant case that more information had to be released. Now, the one thing that really strikes me about this the most with is the notion that the Justice Department is really emphasized that they have cooperating witnesses, civilian witnesses that are helping with this investigation. They are making that very clear in this document. It's very unusual for them to make such a broad statement. And also the fact that they're stating flatly that they believe that these witnesses could be subject to retaliation and also intimidation. Very concerning by the Justice Department. And I'm being told that they have to find out how was this material protected while it was at Mar-a-Lago all those many months? Who might have had access to it? That is a critical question because they remind me that some of this information is among the most sensitive secrets that the government has.
Yeah, because even if authorities have recovered this information, who knows where it's been and who may have seen it. Pierre, thank you. Let's bring in Brad Garrett. He's an ABC News contributor and former agent with the FBI. Brad, I want to ask you specifically where this investigation goes from here now that some of this information has been revealed.
So keep in mind with that all of the information that's blacked out are investigative techniques. They're references to individuals. To move this case forward, you have to go back to what they had even before they went to Mar-a-Lago. And the reality is there is apparently a lot of evidence to support many of the allegations that you've had attorneys talk about today. So the FBI will continue to do what it always does, is put this puzzle together. They'll look at wiretaps. They'll look at other witnesses. They'll look at movement of documents. They'll look at CCTV, like you do in any other case, obviously with a lot of scrutiny. But all I'm suggesting is this case was much further down the road, I believe, than many of the cases I've worked on in the past because of the special circumstances. Obviously, a former president. That's not going to slow DOJ down and the FBI in moving forward.
Brad Garrett, thank you. Let's bring back Mary McCord. And Mary, I know that you've been taking a few minutes here to kind of pour over some of these other pages here. Do you get any indication that the Justice Department plans to file charges anytime soon?
Well, I think that to answer that, we have to also look at the redacted motion to keep certain portions under seal that was also just released today. And that makes it very clear that the investigation is very much ongoing, right? That there are witnesses whose identity needs to be protected. There's ongoing investigative steps that the DOJ points out, if they were revealed in the affidavit, could lead to someone being able to obstruct the investigation, right? And then, of course, there were the 6E grand jury material that's redacted, law enforcement identifications to protect law enforcement officers, and third-party confidential information. So all of that shows, and the vast number of redactions shows this is very much an ongoing investigation. There are still investigative steps to take. And so I don't think we should be expecting anything imminently in terms of charges. I mean, remember, they gathered lots of boxes. They've got to go through them. They've got to really assess in great detail. And that is potentially being held up by this separate motion that Trump has filed for a special master. So I do, I agree with the FBI agent, former FBI agent you just had on, that they would have been fairly far along before they took such an overt step, but I don't think they're there yet. I think there's more work to be done.
Mary, thank you. Let's bring back John Carl because I want to get back inside what's going on at Mar-a-Lago. What are you learning about how the Trump team plans to respond? There have been some reports, some questions about whether there could even be a shakeup within the legal team.
You know, the bottom line is that the former president has a legal team that is short on experience. He's been trying to get somebody to take on this case for some time. He's been turned down. I know of personally more than one a high-profile attorney who has worked with him in the past declined to take this case on now. But the big picture here is when you look, even as heavily redacted as this is, when you read in black and white this affidavit saying that the search of the premises is justified because, quote, probable cause exists to believe that evidence, contraband, fruits of a crime, or other illegally possessed, other items illegally possessed in violation of the law. I mean, it's clear that there is a substantial criminal investigation underway here. The other thing that really stands out to me is how long the effort was underway to get the material back. We see here that the National Archives began its effort to get material back from Donald Trump in May of last year. And it wasn't until January that those initial 15 boxes were returned. And we see how much classified information was in those boxes. I mean, Pierre went through the numbers. And that's well before we get to the search, this latest search of Mar-a-Lago, where there was even more highly classified information. And it seems quite haphazard. There's reference in here to newspaper clippings, handwritten notes, and other such items amidst this the classified documents. So, what's the Trump team thinking in Mar-a-Lago? Well, I would imagine after looking at this affidavit that the effort to get a serious, experienced criminal defense legal team in place is more urgent than it has ever been for Donald Trump.
Yeah, to your point there, John, right there on page 8, it talks about how highly classified records were unfolded, intermixed with other records, and otherwise improperly identified. John, Carl, Pierre Thomas, our thanks to our entire team here. Our coverage does continue on ABC News Live and abcnews.com. You can also get breaking news alerts on the ABC News app. I'll be back here tonight with the entire team for World News Tonight. I'm Whit Johnson in New York. Have a great day.
This has been a special report from ABC News.